Former 5-star Williams Nwaneri has transferred to Nebraska from Missouri. This is a former 5-star recruit coming out of high school, has all the tools and traits you're looking for in a pass rusher. And Nebraska, I think, is in a similar situation, D, to what we were talking about yesterday with Ole Miss, where you may not always be able to land top 5, top 10 classes out of high school, but you're going to take your chances on a talented guy like this who has, I mean, he was a 5-star. He was a number 1 edge for a reason. Didn't really see the field much last year at Missouri, so that makes you wonder. Only a couple tackles, a sack, but Matt Rhule and staff taking a chance here on Williams Nwaneri.
Yeah, and you lose, if you're Nebraska, you lose a defensive end to the portal with James Williams, one of your top young pass rushers, enters the portal, so you got to replace that as well. The thing that jumps out here to me is traits. So when Matt Rhule, every stop he's been in, and you heard him in interviews, he is a traits guy. He wants guys that run track. He wants guys with size, speed, specs, and then he coaches them up, especially at places that don't have the ability to recruit 5-stars all the time, which like Baylor and, of course, Nebraska. You get guys with traits, maybe they have certain rough edges that you could coach up, but you can get that track speed and that just overall talent to the football field over time, and then you're looking at a big, fast, athletic team that wasn't always recruiting 5-stars. Now, Nwaneri, he was a 5-star, right? But even as a 5-star, he was very much a traits-based projection when you looked at this player. It was not someone that was completely dominant at the high school level. Some people thought he needed a redshirt, which, of course, he did not play as a freshman at Missouri. Extended snaps. He did have 2 tackles and a sack, but it wasn't certainly what you saw with Dylan Stewart, who was ranked in a similar fashion. So everybody kind of knew this would be a raw player who needed some development. And Matt Rhule says, all right, well, look, number 1, I want traits anyways. This is how I like my players. Number 2, I'm not going to get a guy like this out of high school straight. So this is an alternative way to get the same player only 1 year removed. Is the price cheaper? I don't even know. I mean, I'm assuming the price went down a little bit. So you get the player. He's from Lee Summit, Missouri, 3.5-hour drive from Lincoln, which by Great Plains standards, that's, right down the road. But when it comes to defensive linemen with this kind of ability, there's a reason they always are going to have a market, because there's just not many of these dudes walking around planet Earth. Certainly not like this kid. And I think if you're Nebraska, yes, big blow to lose James Williams, but here you have somebody with probably even more upside if you can hone it, develop it, and unleash it against the Big Ten.
And then just looking at Nebraska as a whole, D, you'd have to think roster-wise, Matt Rhule is looking at this offseason like we've got to go all in a sense, because first 2 years, 5-7, 6-6, you understood the rebuilding job it was going to be there. But you have Dylan Rhule going into his 2nd year now. Year 1, not really what you would necessarily have hoped for in terms of momentum, I think, going into this next season. So I think this has to be a pretty critical offseason for Matt Rhule in Nebraska.
It is, but look, it's all a matter of perspective, right? So if you look at Nebraska, this is their first bowl since 2016, right? So that was 2 coaches ago. Mike Riley coming fresh off the Bo Pelini era. Bo Pelini, by the way, you go back and look at his production, or his team's production while he was there. I mean, it was bowls every single season. Then you get Mike Riley making 2 bowls, and then a drought since 2016 all the way up to 2024. So yes, it's not where you want to be when you have a 5-star quarterback and a coach that really wants to get some hype behind his name, but it is an improvement. And if you can show steady improvement, now you got something to sell. Of course, Rhule announced he is staying with the program. There were some rumors he jumped in the portal, so that's a little bit of a boost there. Now you have another top 10 player in that last year's class. So really you have 2 top 10 players in last year's class playing for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. That's something new. You want to develop those guys so they're both first-round picks, and now you have something else to sell. So with Nebraska, a no-brainer move. I think they benefit a little bit from geography here, but great opportunity for him to develop without a ton of pressure like he might have had in Missouri, given what they invested to bring him in. And I think this is the kind of environment where he could thrive, but there's not the same pressure, but it's not that much different in Nebraska. It's still a high-profile program. It's still a big name. So Last year was a redshirt year. Got to produce this year. At least show something.